Hey, I'm Cody Sharp. Today I'm going to talk to you about website accessibility. So, what do we mean by that? And why is it important? And how can you do it? And do you have to do it? So, let's first of all go into what website accessibility is. Website accessibility is allowing people or helping people with disabilities, whether it's visual or hearing or whatever those disabilities may be, use software or other applications that allow for them to more easily use a website. And so that's kind of what it is. And this can be done in a number of different ways. For example, let's say that someone is visually impaired, and one easy solution, if they're visually impaired, may be to change the contrast on your website so the text shows easier for people with that particular visual impairment. Another example might be if they are blind entirely, they may use software to help them go through and navigate a website. It reads different areas of the website so they can use it. So one thing that comes to mind a lot is a lot of people want to do this type of thing, and they feel like it's a good thing to do, and they want to do it. But how do they do it is one thing, and then are they legally responsible for doing it? So we'll start with that one. Are they legally responsible? So most companies know that if they are a public accommodation, that means that they are a bank or a hospital or those types of things. Then the American Disabilities Act, that's been passed many years ago, basically makes it so they need to have a plan in place to allow people with disabilities to use their services. So imagine people in wheelchairs need a ramp to get into the bank or to the hospital, those types of things. And so the American Disabilities Act has basically created a platform that allows for all of these types of companies, or makes these types of companies comply and provide these types of things for people with disabilities. So then over the last like 15 or 20 years, the real question is, as these companies have turned increasingly online with their services, do they need to continue supplying services in this way for websites? And now I'm going to say all of this is not a lawyer, but as someone that has read a lot about this topic and has seen a lot of different stories that have kind of gone through this. So we'll start with whether or not websites are considered a public accommodation, which is really what the ADA outlines as something that needs to be done. So, a public accommodation, according to the ADA, would be a physical presence. There is some court cases more recently where an intangible presence is inclusive of that. But all of the examples outlined in the ADA's actual law seem to be physical locations, based on what I've read. So, an intangibility, in the case that was decided against, I think it was like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something like that. Basically, it was an inability by the caller that was interested in becoming one of the contestants on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to be able to answer a series of questions on their phone. They were deaf. They were a deaf individual, and they were trying to sign up to be a contestant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But because there was no other way for them to sign up to be a contestant, they were not able to answer these questions because there was not an outlet. So even though the phone call was an intangible situation, because there was no other outlet to do this type of thing, it was ruled in favor of the potential contestant over the company. So that's an example of an intangible situation where there was no way for them to do something else physically at a company that offers physical service. So that's the only example that's currently being used in court cases. There is currently a court case, or at least there was up until recently, for a individual that filed prescriptions for 15 years at Winn-Dixie grocery stores. And this case in 2019 was decided in favor of the individual who is blind, and they said that the website wasn't ADA compliant, and it didn't allow someone to actually do prescriptions. They couldn't file their prescriptions online or something to that effect. Well, then it went through all the appeal process and the case was thrown out. And the reason the case was thrown out was, one, is a website a public accommodation? And it was decided in the appeal process that it was not, by the majority, that a website is not a public accommodation. Specifically, it doesn't include the intangible aspects of that other case because they could still go to the store and they could file those, they could get their prescription filled that way. So it seems to me, as a non-lawyer, as a layman, that basically we have a situation where if you are a physical location, a bank, a hospital, those types of things, and your website is providing a service that your service that you can't provide at a physical location, that you should be much more willing and able to do whatever is necessary to become ADA compliant, to keep yourself away from any kind of issue around legality. Also, because, doing these types of things can be incredibly beneficial for your users, right? For your visitors, for your clients, those types of things that are impaired visually or disabled in some other way. That being said, smaller companies, ones that only have an online presence, based on the court cases, and again, I'm not a legal scholar, please don't take this as legal advice, it seems like, based on the way that the current laws are written, you are not liable because you do not offer a public accommodation. You simply offer a website, but because you have no physical presence, it can't be used against you that you are not offering both a basically another way. You're not basically offering a public way, a physical way of doing it, and an online. You're only offering online. And based on how the current law is set up, that is not something that you need to comply with. Again, not a lawyer, but something to consider after reading all the court cases. So with all of that being said, what can you do in order to become more compliant with your existing website? So there's a couple of things that you can do. One is go through your existing website and try to use things like alt tags. What this is you go to an image and you basically use a little bit of code and you describe what that image is. This helps visually impaired people understand what your website is about, and their software can read those things out loud to better allow them to use your website. Another thing you can do is you want to make sure that your menu items can be tabbed through easily. You can try this out by using the tab button on your own keyboard, and in the browser it should see the tab go from one place to another to another. There are checkers that will allow you to online check your website. You can search for WCAG compliant website, and there should be a whole bunch of different services and tools out there to check and see if you're compliant. Now, the WCAG compliancy, again, this is an industry term or an industry board of nonprofit that started in 1999. And basically, it was trying to make it so the websites of the world were more helpful for disabled people. And it's a great thing. But again, this is not in law. It's not something that is legal. It's not something, at least in the United States, something that you definitively have to do. But if you can, you should. What's another way that you can help with your website's accessibility? There are a series of tools that can be overlaid on top of your website. If you go to AP, like the actual news provider AP, in the bottom left-hand corner or bottom right-hand corner, there'll be a little person with their hands up. This can be used by clicking on it to enable accessibility services. This is one of the first websites I saw with this, and that can allow for your text to be more easily seen. It can allow for your software to be more easily adapted. And so you can overlay software on top of your existing website without changing anything on your website in order for you to be more accessible to people that are disabled. I'd highly recommend it. We're using a couple of different companies, and I can provide that information to you. If you're interested, I'll put it down inside of the comments that have provided these little plugins. If you're using WordPress, you can just add it that way. And they have a cost, but the nice thing about it is there's a lot of changes happening all the time for accessibility. Right now, we're still using things from 4 years ago with part of the WCAG certifications, or as specifications, I should say. We're still using 4-year-old processes, and they're being updated. And the next version is supposed to come out sometime this year or next year. And then they're already talking about another version, version 3. This has to do with browsers. This has to do with mobile devices. This has to do with desktops. I mean, so it has to cover so many different things and so many different disabilities. So realistically, the only way for you to ever have the ability to connect with the most people is for you to use a software that's constantly being updated like this in order for you to be accessible now and into the future. If you only do it as a one-off, you're not going to continue having that accessibility. So the main reason I bring all of this up, well, one of the main reasons is two things. One, being accessible is a great thing to do. If you can, I recommend it, and I'm going to try to do it more and more as we do more projects going forward. I'm going to talk to our clients more about it. And now that I understand more about the world of accessibility and like how you can do it, and I had to educate myself because I wasn't knowledgeable about this. I'm going to try to do this more and more and make it a part of what we do when we create websites. But secondly, uh, it also a lot of people are worried about being sued. And the truth of the matter is, like I said, there's not a lot of legalese around this type of thing. But most people just pay off a lawyer that reaches out to them because they're very concerned about being sued and losing a lot of money or time or having all these lawyer costs. And so you'll see a lot of lawyer trolls go out there and they will spam all the banks or all the hospitals, and they use those people in particular because those people are definitely part of the current ADA law, right? So those people already have to have a physical location. Those people already have to prescribe to having those types of things. So they go after these types of companies right now to try and get some low hanging fruit of, basically making them settle. So, with all that being said, I would recommend at this point start looking into accessibility. Start looking at some of these different softwares that can overlay on top of your website. It doesn't change your code. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. It only requires that you have a little bit of a developer help just getting it set up initially. And once it's set up, then these things should continue adapting. Now, there's a cost that goes along with this, and it's important for us to continue keeping in mind we want our website seen by people as across every spectrum, right? Whether they're disabled or not, we want as many possible new clients or new visitors that we can have, and for them to be able to use our website. So if we go back to that as kind of the moral side of things, we want to do this anyway. So with all that being said, hope this was helpful. I know it was longer than I intended, but there's a big topic out there that a lot of people are interested in, and I wanted to kind of go through what I found out as I was trying to understand and be more knowledgeable about this, and share it with you if it helps at all. Thanks.